Hello and welcome to episode 2361 of Effectively Wild, a baseball podcast from FanGraphs presented by our Patreon supporters. I am Ben Lindbergh of The Ringer, joined by Meg Rowley of FanGraphs. Hello, Meg.
Hello.
Well, we kind of cursed Nathan Eovaldi by marveling at how low his ERA was the other day. Not for the first time this season that we have complimented him, to be fair, but nonetheless, he did see his ERA jump up from 1.38 to an unsightly 1.71 after his most recent start against the Diamondbacks, in which he allowed 5 runs in 5 innings.
Yeah.
That is a 9 ERA on the day. So while we're celebrating low ERAs as long as they last, I figured that we could briefly talk about Trevor Rogers, too.
Yeah.
Because his ERA is down in an Eovaldi before we jinxed him range. He's at 1.43. How about that?
How about that?
He's had a bunch of good starts in a row. Obviously, he's had almost nothing but good starts this season, but he has managed to have 4 excellent starts in a row, or I guess 3 at least, in which he has allowed 1 run in each, and yet his ERA has barely budged because that's just what his ERA is. It's like when you allow 1 earned run in 8 innings, and then 1 earned run in 6 innings, and then 1 earned run in 7 innings, which was his most recent start against your Orioles, unfortunately for them, because they did.
My Orioles? You mean my Mariners?
Yes, your Mariners. Their Orioles. Trevor Rogers' Orioles.
Yeah.
Your Mariners, who succumbed to Trevor Rogers 4-3. But his ERAs, so he had on July 26th, he pitched 7 shutout innings against the Rockies in an 18-0 blowout, and that dropped his ERA to 1.49. So then he has an excellent start against the Cubs, which lowered it to 1.44, and then an excellent start against the Phillies, which did not move it at all, at least out to the first decimal place. It was still 1.44. And then he has an excellent start against Seattle, and it dropped all the way to 1.43.
My goodness.
So when your ERA is that low at the beginning of the day, it is very difficult to make it go lower.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to have it go higher, as Nathan Eovaldi found out, but there's not much margin there to actually lower it, because even if you throw up some shutout innings, it's just not going to go down that much at this point in the season.
Isn't that just the cruelest thing? Isn't it just the worst business? Do you think that my sneezing and not being able to mute my mic in time is why you held me responsible for the Orioles? Although the Mariners aren't playing especially great right now.
Maybe. Shane can mute your sneezes even if you don't.
I know, but I
power.
normally try to because it's distracting. And when you don't, your co-host forgets the team that their co-host roots for, It's just dastardly in that way.
So distracted by the sneeze.
I am tickled on his behalf. And look, my Seattle Mariners didn't exactly enjoy their experience of Trevor Rogers, but I always like it when the book on Rogers was sort of that it was never going to get better again, right? That it wasn't going to, that his time sort of fulfilling the promise of that first full season in Miami was done. There's no going back to it, right? We weren't going to see another 4-win season from him. And so for him to be in this position, albeit over 69 nice innings.
Very nice.
But only 69, right?
And a third.
And
Don't forget the third.
Don't forget the third. But we can look at his 2025 campaign as it is currently constituted and say, okay, keep going, buddy, and let's see how you trend over the rest of this year. And then if you're able to build on that momentum going into 2026. But he was just very much in the ain't no salvaging him kind of territory. And then his first, run with Baltimore last year was even worse than his initial run with Miami. And then, people who were feeling ungenerous toward the Orioles would be like, well, they're really good at pitching development. They'd be able to help Trevor Rogers get better. And so it felt like his season was freighted with all of this stuff, that wasn't really about him.
Especially because Kyle Stowers, meanwhile, was having a fantastic All-Star season for Miami. So it was the
breakout
one time
season.
Yeah, that even I would say so, yes.
Even you would say so, yes.
And it was the one time that Mike Elias actually surrendered some prospects, and it looked like he had picked the worst possible time to do that or the worst prospects to give up on. And even now, as Stowers has had a more valuable season than Rogers, but it does help ease the sting of the Stowers breakout that Rogers has returned to form or perhaps improved his form.
Right. And so it's like it had all of this baggage that came with it. And then he, quietly has sort of done better. And it's not going to change the course of the Orioles season, right? Like in a sense, like he is doing precisely what they needed, which was provide good starting pitching. But again, only 11 starts. See, only 11, no third. No. And so not enough to fully bolster a rotation that we all knew was going to be vulnerable coming into the season and has proven to be quite vulnerable. But it's a good story. And it's a good story in a part of the roster where I think fans of the Orioles are just like really desperate for one. So it's exciting. It's exciting for him. And I'm excited to see how the rest of the season trends and then how he's able to hopefully sustain these gains going into 2026 because it would be good, it would be good. They have him for one more year, I think. Yeah, he's a free agent entering the 2027 season. So, as you're trying to squint and kind of find your way toward a more competitive Baltimore team next year, this version of Rogers over a fuller complement of innings, well, that might be an important, sort of cornerstone of that effort, which isn't to say that they shouldn't, like, please, dear God, spend some money to really do it and don't do these half measures. No, and you can't count on this. It could go badly. It's gone badly for him before, but an important potential cornerstone for them next year nonetheless. So
since he made his season debut for Baltimore on May 24th, there are only 5 pitchers in baseball who have amassed more FanGraphs WAR than Trevor Rogers. Christopher Sanchez, Tarek Skubal, Garrett Crochet, Paul Skeens, and, of course, Matthew Boyd of the Cubs, who's really propping up that rotation. Yeah. And all of those guys have at least 10 more innings pitched over that span even than Trevor Rogers. In fact, Rogers is the only guy in the top 16 pitchers who has fewer than 70 innings pitched. So everyone else is pretty much well above him. So he has pitched so well on a rate basis that even though he's made fewer starts over that span, like most of those guys have 13 or 14 or 15 starts since late May, and Rogers has had 11, and yet he is right up there because his starts have been so excellent. So not about to get his name tattooed on my butt cheek or anything. That is a callback, of course, to the Orioles fan who did.
I wish you hadn't said anything. I wish you had just kind of left it there and then seen if we had gotten like an email about it. Like, Ben, of all the things to do, that's a little extreme.
I know. Well, that guy, hey, he had the right idea. I mean, you can say that he he picked the right guy.
He had
get
an idea
tattooed. He did. Yeah.
Yes.
It didn't backfire immediately, or maybe it did because he now has Trevor Rogers tattooed on his butt cheek. But in terms of Trevor Rogers' performance, I'm not saying he's butt cheek worthy even now, but he has, I guess, justified that fan's faith.
Sure. I mean, I'll say now what I think I said then, which is, it just is clearly not a canvas that guy takes particularly seriously. You're not wagering your own butt if you take your butt seriously. It's an unserious hinder that he's working with over there. So.
Can you imagine if Christopher Sanchez were to steal another Cy Young Award away from Zach Wheeler? I mean, probably Paul Skeens will win it.
I thought you were going to say, can you imagine if Christopher Sanchez got Trevor Rogers' name tattooed on his butt? And I was going to say, no, I cannot imagine a scenario where that would happen. That would be profoundly odd.
I can't concoct a scenario like that either. But I assume Paul Skeens will win. And even though he ran into the Brewers buzzsaw the other day, but other than Skeens, Sanchez is at the top of the NL pitching war leaderboard, just barely ahead of Zach Wheeler and Logan Webb, and another Philly, Jesus Luzardo. Those Phillies, pretty good pitchers on that team. But man, Wheeler, he's just perennially almost the best, or even arguably the best.
I know.
I want him to win one at this point. Not that I'm rooting against Skeens or Sanchez or Webb, but Skeens should have time in theory. He should get his awards, and Wheeler, who knows how many more opportunities he'll have.
Yep. Yeah, that's precisely my thinking. Like Wheeler has sort of bandied about potential retirement talk at the conclusion of this contract, and we'll see how serious he ends up being about that. But Skeens is gonna get his. I feel confident in that. I don't know how many more turns Wheeler is gonna have. So now he has to be healthy the rest of the year for it to even be a conversation worth having. And I guess we'll see. But yeah, I would like it for him. I just, it's going to be a weird conversation when his career ends. As we talked about, like, there's the Hall of Fame of it all, and like, what do you do with him given his late start? But mostly it's just like, there are guys where their careers conclude and you go, they really never won a Cy Young. Like they never managed that, really? And I don't like that conversation, because then it ends up being about like slights and did the voters get it wrong, and then it's less about their career, and they deserve it to be about their career. Like that's what Zach Wheeler deserves, because he's had a good and an interesting one given its trajectory. So
and the performance is what it was, regardless of whether they win the award or not. But it does sway some people's thinking, and it wouldn't necessarily keep you out of Cooperstown. Certainly, there are Nolan Ryan and Mike Messina, et cetera, like players who were in he never won one, best pitcher never to win one, and you can say the same about the MVP award. But it helps. It does seem like there should be some kind of career achievement award other than just getting into the Hall of Fame, which obviously is one, but just some sort of, lifetime achievement, like an actor who's been nominated a bunch of times gets some kind of career achievement award. It's like, I don't know, something like a career MVP, a career Cy Young. It's like if you were the best pitcher over a several year span, but you were never the best or clearly the best or deemed to be the best in any single season, because Wheeler's been the best pitcher over a several season span at this point. So that's in a way more impressive than just having been the best in one season. It's better to be the best over several seasons.
I agree.
But that is still sort of held against you by some.
Well, and I think, I'm going to betray that I don't have a great sense of this on a relative historical basis. So I am perhaps wrong in my feeling about it. But I think particularly when you have eras, this is maybe more of an issue on the MVP side of things than it is on the Cy Young side. Although it's an issue on the pitcher side because pitchers so rarely win MVP awards anymore. But, particularly when you're in an era like this one, where it feels like we've had these like long stretches of MVP sort of hoarding. Hoarding implies that the player gets to decide to keep the award, but it's like we are doling out awards to a very small pool. And there are very good players who I imagine in a different era without a Mike Trout, without an Ohtani, would maybe have, popped a season where they have an MVP award. But we have such concentration in its distribution that it feels like, well, you can't hold it against someone that they're in the same era as Ohtani. Like that's not, it doesn't mean that they're not an exemplary baseball player, right? So it does mean quite often they're not the most valuable one. But again, like I think it sort of skews our perception of the very, very good Hall of Fame worthy guys a little bit, because they're just not only are they not winning, but like often the last couple of years, these races have just been done, and they've been done early, and there's not a lot of, like this year, there's some awards vote contestation, but it's in like, the Rookie of the Year awards because the field's weak. That's not that's not the same sort of thing. So I like the idea of there being some kind of career ending honor. I think that would be satisfying. But then who decides? And then do we have to vote on another thing? Is that a BBWA responsibility? Award stuff is like so controversial.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm thinking like, because Tom Cruise won an honorary Academy Award this year. I think he's been nominated for 4 Oscars, but hasn't won one. And so they give him an honorary one. And Samuel L. Jackson won one of those a few years ago. It's that kind of.
Samuel L. Jackson doesn't have a regular Academy Award win? That's shocking.
Think so. Yeah, he was nominated, I believe, for Pulp Fiction, but it's just like, and maybe because you just made the distinction between regular and honorary, there's a little less cachet to that, although there shouldn't be really, because it's like a career impact award. Yeah, that's big. That means you're like an icon. You're synonymous with the cinema. Like, you can't tell the story of movies during your career without you, that kind of thing.
I mean, I would argue that you can't tell the story of American cinema during Samuel L. Jackson's tenure without Samuel L. Jackson.
The most cinema, certainly, if not always the best, but also some.
Look, that Deep Blue Sea performance, I will ride for that. That is that's the best. I mean, it's not his best work, to be clear. That would be wildly insulting to Samuel L. Jackson, but it is important. Okay, I want us to agree on that, because what a good chump that ends up being.
You can get an honorary one as something, even though you've gotten an actual one as something else. I don't know if you're ineligible for an honorary one if you've never won one, maybe, but like Clint Eastwood has won one for Best Director, for instance, and Best Picture even, and has been nominated for Best Actor, but he got an an honorary for acting, I believe. So, or Mel Brooks, I think, has one, but not as an actor or something. So, yeah, it's kind of like that, but it's in a way more impressive because it considers the whole sum of your contributions.
Right, the body of work.
Yeah, it's not just one outlier performance, because there are plenty of actors who won, but just didn't have another great role, or weren't all that great in other times, or maybe they were just in a weak class or something. So one could be kind of a fluke to some extent, but a career achievement award, that can't be a fluke, because that's just a bigger sample. So, I mean, I guess that's what the Hall of Fame is essentially, but that doesn't feel honorary. I mean, it does. It confers an honor, but it's maybe the greatest honor. It's not like a makeup exactly.
Yeah, we need like an in-between.
Ultimate. Yeah.
We need an intermediate level of honor that allows you to say, like, this player was really superlative in an important way, and to your point, maybe not in a way that guaranteed them an award victory, but in a way that needs, that requires acknowledgement nonetheless. And then you don't have to. I think it would also take some of the sting out of some of the Hall of Fame disappointment stuff. Maybe the era committees would have a more hinged approach to their decisions, because it's like, well, we don't have to we need a different example than Harold Baines, because I just feel so bad about it. But we don't have to let him in. He got this award, so it's been honored. Look at him holding his this thing award. They should let the New York chapter of the BBWA vote on the Career Achievement Award, not exclusively, but like everyone in it, since you guys never get awards votes.
Yeah, it's true. Individually, it's tough. All right. So, well, speaking of one superlative player, so I was watching Ohtani pitch and hit, of course, on Wednesday, and it was not his greatest outing. It started well. He hit a leadoff triple and scored, and he was pitching well, and then he seemed to kind of run out of gas. They were trying to push him to 5 innings for the first time in a start this season, and the wheels kind of came off, although one reason the wheels came off in that final inning was that Teoscar Hernandez has no wheels. That guy, I like Teoscar, but as an outfielder, he has negative range.
It's rough out there. Yeah, it's rough out there.
I don't know how that's possible. It's like he gets farther away when it's like he cannot close the distance between himself and anything. Like just from watching Ohtani starts, it's like if there is a ball that is hit out in his vicinity and you're thinking, will it fall? The answer is yes, if Teoscar Hernandez is out there, because he is just not going to get there. And I guess since the start of last season, he trails only Nick Castellanos, it looks like, in bad defense, StatCast-based negative defense among outfielders. So, yeah, it's rough. Not to say Ohtani didn't make mistakes himself, but
sure.
When I saw that thing fall and realized who was out there, it was like, oh, well, I gave up on that one immediately. So,
like if Teoscar Hernandez was the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, no one would have to worry. They'd just be like, we're just going to outrun this T-Rex.
Just
weirdly has Teoscar Hernandez's head. Like the rest of the body is a T-Rex, but then it's Teo's head on there, and he's just like, I can't get closer. My little arms aren't even the problem. T-Rexes would be terrible fielders, right? Like in the outfield especially, they'd never have the arm for it. You couldn't put them in a corner to save their lives. Might save yours, though, depending on if you're running away. I don't know why I went with this bit, but I sure did lean into it, didn't I?
Ohtani did throw really one nasty splitter to strike out Luis Rengifo, and it was
that was nice.
It was just wild movement, just darting way away. Every now and then he throws one of those. I'm like, oh, right. He throws a splitter. He doesn't even throw it that much anymore. It's weird to use another Dodgers starter comp. It's like when Kershaw came up and Vin Scully dubbed his curveball public enemy number one. And so you sort of associated Clayton Kershaw with the curveball, but he hasn't been a curveball pitcher in a really long time. He's just been slider. And Ohtani, too, is just, it's sweepers and sliders and stuff. He doesn't throw the splitter. He hardly throws it at all. He's thrown it like 4% of the time this season. Yeah. In his rookie year, he threw it almost a quarter of the time. And it was a big weapon for him. It was like his number one go-to out pitch to get whiffs, the splitter. And now it's just every now and then he throws it out, pulls it out of his pocket. And it's like, oh, yeah, he had that pitch that was supposedly his out pitch, and now he barely even throws it because he has all these other pitches. I brought this up mainly to mention that he faced Mike Trout for the first time since their WBC matchup. Yeah. And he struck him out a couple times. And the first time he struck him out, I think on a full count sweeper, just like in the WBC, although this time it was looking, not swinging. And they had a little moment there. Yeah. Trout kind of smiled or grimaced. I don't know if he was like reminiscing about the WBC, like, you got me again, or if he was thinking, you're going to throw me that on 3-2 or what, or just acknowledging how good a pitch it was. And then Shohei was smiling too as he was coming off the mound. I like those little moments between former teammates, especially a callback to a milestone moment like that. And my last observation from that game is that I'm still upset about the flickering that happens behind the batters and the pitcher. I haven't really ranted about this recently. Yeah. We were complaining about it constantly during the postseason. Yes. Because in October, we're all watching the same games if we're watching any games. And so everyone knew exactly what I was talking about. It's still a problem. They have not addressed this. And
they have not.
It is still just as distracting to me that it was like a booking.com sign digitally superimposed behind home plate, and all the batters were flickering, and Shohei's hat was flickering, and the handle of the bat that some of the batters was green because the green screen. They got to figure this out because we're another October rolling around, and presumably we're going to be subjected to this yet again in these big games on the national stage. And man, I mean, we accept and resign ourselves to a certain amount of advertising. That's just the way that capitalism works. But at least make the advertising a little less intrusive. I mean, I know the point is sort of to make it noticeable, but this is not noticeable in a good way, although it did just earn booking.com multiple mentions on this podcast because of the flickering, which I would not have noted otherwise.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a great deal of research and theory on this from an advertising perspective, but it does seem like constantly annoying the hell out of your potential consumers would have a negative impact on your ability to sell them a product. Mm-hmm. Although I've been seeing those stupid jingoistic truck commercials for the last 6 months, and they don't seem like they're inclined to get rid of those. So what do I know about ads other than I find them irritating? But it's like we've done all these Marvel movies and we can't have better green screen on a baseball broadcast. Like, what's the thing here?
People complain about how the Marvel movies look too, but still.
Yes, but this seems more straightforward.
It does
you're
seem
not
simpler.
trying to.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not trying to unite multiple, timelines to be snapped out of. I don't know what's happening in those movies anymore, and I don't care.
Most people don't.
I don't care to know.
It's a problem, but yeah, but this, the green screen, we gotta figure this out.
We gotta figure it out
sometime soon. I'm sure it doesn't bother other people as much as it bothers me, but people must be noticing that this is happening.
It bothers people. We've
got plenty of emails about it from people, but it's a self-selecting group of people who listen to pedantic complaints about baseball.
I think the thing about it is that people love to be bothered by stuff, and I don't mean to doubt the sincerity of your irritation here, because I believe you, but I imagine that on any given potential grievance, you've got some company, because boy, do we like to be annoyed by stuff. It's satisfying in a way.
Dodgers lost that game, by the way, got swept by the Angels, the indignity, and as we speak, on a Thursday off day, heading into a showdown over the weekend with the Padres, they are in second place, looking up at San Diego for the first time this late in a season since 2010, I think.
I'm going to try something, and you can tell me that I can't get away with saying this, okay? Not that I can't, not like it's problematic, but like I can't pull it off. There's a nude daddy in the. I don't even have this. I don't have the sincerity of my own conviction on that. It's hard because now I'm picturing the Padres mascot, which is like an intentionally goofy looking friar, like they make, because they don't want him to be scary, they want him to be goofy. So, because like people mascots, that can get tricky, you can go in a bad direction on that one. But now I'm just imagining trying to. It's like when people were calling what's his name on Gilded Age, Train Daddy.
I prefer Railroad Daddy.
Railroad Daddy? They don't just call him Train Daddy? Why don't they just call him both. Train Daddy?
Railroad Daddy is more satisfying to say.
Railroad Daddy? No, that takes too much. That's too much. That's too many syllables. You should just say Train Daddy.
This is the character played by Morgan Spector, to be clear. George Russell, the robber baron.
George Russell.
But one of the better robber barons.
Right. Yeah. He didn't shoot the protesters that were upset about that mine. So, it's fine. I am uncomfortable with how attractive I find that character because he is, in fact, a robber baron. How far away from the finale of this season do we have to be before I can talk about it without being rude about spoilers? Are we there yet?
No, but maybe we can get to it on a Patreon bonus pod.
Okay, because I thought one thing was going to happen and then it didn't. And because I was so stressed about it happening, I was totally blindsided by the thing that did happen. And so is the Gilded Age good? Remains to be seen. Totally unclear. Do I love it tremendously? Oh boy, yeah, I do. In fact, I was like, I have to watch it on Sunday night. Normally, I'm like, nothing that happens in this show matters remotely. I mean, that's not totally true, but it's close. So normally I'm like, if I end up watching it on Wednesday, it doesn't matter. But I had to know the fate of, I'm not calling him Railroad Daddy. They don't just call him Train Daddy. They should call him Train Daddy. I have notes for Reddit.
Yeah, stay tuned for additional Gilded Age takes. You can.
I got so
pay
many.
for the privilege of hearing those if you're.
That's
so
right.
inclined.
That's how good they are.
We can't give those away for free. So we'll save further Gilded Age takes for now, but we do have to talk about the Twins at least briefly. Apologies to Twins fans, but boy, just when it seemed like the franchise might be on the verge of deliverance, that a sale could be completed soon. In fact, they have pulled back from that brink and will not be selling. Right. So, Rob Manfred, you were in the room at the All-Star game. He was talking to the BBWAA, and he said, I know some things that you don't know. I can tell you with a lot of confidence that there will be a transaction there. This is in reference to the Twin sale, and it will be consistent with the kind of pricing that has taken place. There will be a transaction. We just need to be patient while they rework. Technically not wrong, I suppose. There will be a transaction, but not the transaction that he was clearly suggesting would happen.
And not consistent with prior market values for teams.
Yeah. So the poll ads have decided that actually, just kidding, faked you out, psych, we will be holding on to the Minnesota Twins. And Twins fans are beside themselves because the one silver lining of what just happened to them at the deadline, other than, as we said, okay, they traded like a lot of relievers, but they were mostly relievers, and they got some starters back, and they've got some other guys, and they've got a great farm system, and maybe things can come together more quickly than you'd assume. But a big reason for optimism seemed to be that they were going to sell the franchise and that someone would buy it who would actually spend on this team, or at least spend more than the poll ads. So more than nothing, essentially. That didn't seem like too high a bar to clear. But no, the poll ads have concluded. Joe said, we feel we're the right people to lead this organization, to own this franchise. I don't know that any Twins fans feel that way. So instead of selling the franchise, they are selling minority shares. There are a couple as yet undisclosed minority owners who are coming in here, one local and one East Coast, and there is no path to a controlling stake, which is unusual. Often in these cases, when an owner brings in someone to take a sizable share, which it sounds like something in the vicinity of 20% of the franchise will be sold. Usually when you get a minority investor like that, there's some pathway to eventually taking over the team, as there is with Justin Ishbia and the White Sox after he pulled out of pursuing the Twins and then pivoted to the White Sox. And eventually there's a path for him to take over that franchise from Jerry Reinsdorf. But in this case, no, there's no deliverance on the horizon from the poll ads. This seems to be just about getting them out from under the debt that they are laboring under. Supposedly, they're hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. And I don't know if that is what scotched a potential sale here or what happened exactly, or whether the offers that they were seeking weren't actually out there. But this is the third time that this has happened in recent years, which rule of three, it seems like, is this a pattern? Is this a trend? Does this mean something? We saw the Orioles sale go through and not at a disappointing price particularly. It was the third highest sale price for an MLB team after the Mets and the Dodgers, who are two, big city, big value franchises. But we've seen the Nationals, the Angels, and now the Twins do this fake out, exploring a sale for a year or more, maybe. And then the end result being that the current ownership remains.
It's a weird thing because you don't want to overreact to what it means for sort of the desirability of teams as like an asset class. Like, if you'll just allow me to express this in the grossest, like, beep, boop, boop kind of terminology I can.
Sure.
Because there do seem to be factors specific to the Twins that have stalled their ability to like move the team, which is the debt that the team itself seems to have been encumbered with. But like, if I'm Rob Manfred, I feel not awesome about this development. So there's that piece of it. But then, for Twins fans, it's like, you can bear a lot if you think that there is really a new day that might dawn. Days dawn. Dawns are just, that's like what they are. They're dawns. But it's a lot harder when you're seemingly trying to reinforce the viability of the business, but not like you're kind of half-assing it, right? And if you're taking on new minority partners and they're looking at the kinds of percentages that we think they are, well, that's not nothing. But I don't know that that's altering from a payroll perspective, at least not fundamentally. So it does put them in a very strange position. And I do wonder, like, if you're the league, it's like, well, are you really in a place of viability with this club if this is where things stand? I don't know the answer to that. You got to be able to maintain some kind of reasonable payroll, and I'm skeptical of their ability to do that based on what we've seen here. So it doesn't seem great. It really doesn't.
No. Yeah, and MLB seemingly reportedly pressured the Rays into selling.
Right.
So they could, in theory, do something similar here, though they certainly didn't with John Fisher and the A's. It's just striking how many sell the team chants you hear.
Yeah.
How many teams now that's invoked. I think there's an article about that recently where it starts sort of as a A's fan rallying cry, perhaps.
Right.
But now you hear sell the team all over the place. You hear Twins fans, Pirates fans sell the team. And yeah, they all have a point. So I guess you hope as a Twins fan that this injection of cash from the minority owners and investors is enough to get this team spending again. But there's a 40-year track record of poll ads being pretty cheap. So it's hard to imagine that they're going to really change their stripes now. I mean, maybe if the worst of this debt load, if this was actually the most pressing impediment that was preventing the Twins from doing something recently, then you get out from under that. Maybe there's a little more wiggle room, breathing room, one would hope. But it paints the deadline in a new light because what a lot of people assumed was, okay, they're just kind of clearing the decks here to smooth out this sale. And you don't want a bunch of payroll and contracts on the books. And so, okay, we'll just do a mini mid-season fire sale here, and then the new owner can construct the roster as they see fit. But if that was not actually the impetus for that, then what was it? I mean, you know, they talked a big game about it being good for the team long term, and maybe it will be. And I think the poll ads even say they didn't mandate that, but you know, I don't really buy that there wasn't some ownership involvement in a dramatic remodeling of the roster of that nature.
Particularly within the context of what we at the time understood to be a team that was looking to sell itself, right? And so if you are trying to execute that transaction, the notion that you're going to just say to your front office, whatever you think is best, doesn't ring true. Now, I imagine at the deadline had, this is me speculating to be clear, had some understanding that like a buyer was not going to materialize, but you still want to have some sort of management over that process as you're trying to get something done. So I don't find that particularly persuasive as a statement from them. But
so maybe each of these cases is an individual situation that doesn't tell us anything about the others, and Artie Moreno is just very unpredictable, and maybe he just did decide that he did not want to divest himself. And then the Lerners at the time had the Masson dispute, and maybe that was an issue, and Moreno had like various legal disputes with the city and everything, and he's kind of mercurial as it is. And so, you know, there are only so many teams, and it does bring some cachet to you, even if you just inherited this team from previous poll ads. But it's probably tough to actually pull the trigger and part with something that's been a part of your family and is kind of like your day-to-day and what makes anyone care about you, basically. But you don't embark lightly on that process of selling either. So people could conclude, like, is this bad for baseball as a business? Does this say something about what people think about broadcast rights and the broadcast bubble bursting? And I'm sure that owners would be quick to say, oh, it's because we don't have the cost certainty of a salary cap, and that makes it less attractive as an investment vehicle. But then you look at the whole history of franchise ownership and how stable and remunerative it has been for decades. And it's hard to believe that that's really going to burst, you know, like maybe will the returns be slightly less than they have been, perhaps, but I don't think it's, there are just so few franchises at that level that there are always people who want to buy in. But, you know, and if you thought that this was a depreciating asset and let's get out while the getting was good, then you'd probably be more motivated to sell. Even if you couldn't get top dollar, it might still be more dollars than you'd get in the future if you thought that this wasn't going to continue to appreciate.
I think that we would be naive not to entertain the possibility that in the future, absent some of the stability and frankly subsidy that was carriage fees over cable, that there won't be less money coming into the sport. That seems possible. But there's a big difference between less money and no money, right? And I think that there's this sort of catastrophizing that goes on where we say, well, it's not going to be as good a business, but that doesn't mean it'll be a bad business, right? And we don't know, we don't know what it'll look like from a rights perspective. You see some of the rights deals that are going on in other sports, even with uncertainty around some part of the broadcast stuff for them. Although obviously like a sport like the NFL is different because it's all national anyway, but it's not like other sports teams aren't selling and selling well. And I think that, what we have heard is that even though there is uncertainty around exactly what broadcast will look like the inventory of games that you have available to you and the viewership that those games garner suggests that it is still a worthwhile product from an advertising perspective. So I think that the sport will be fine and better than fine. It'll be doing well, and the franchise values will continue to appreciate. There might be some slowing of that appreciation. There might be some dip in profit relative to what we've seen in the past, but that doesn't mean that it's suddenly going to be an unprofitable sport. And I don't know if it's terribly convincing argument because he also is just hat and quarter zip guy now. So maybe he just doesn't give a shit. And he has so much money, it doesn't matter to him. So I will acknowledge the potential limitations of this argument, but I will just continue to refer to Steve Cohen being I want to buy the Mets, and are the Mets a more attractive value proposition than the Minnesota Twins? Sure, they absolutely are. It's a bigger media market. It's a franchise that people are more excited about. Fine. But baseball is attracting people who are famously ruthless in their financial acumen to the point of alleged criminality. And so I just don't find it persuasive that it's not a good business to be in. I do think it's really interesting, where the commissioner feels comfortable applying pressure and not. And I don't even know that I, with the exception of Fisher, necessarily disagree with him, but it is interesting where just some of the language that he deploys publicly for some teams versus others at similar sort of checkpoints in a potential sale process. It's interesting. And I wonder if some of that rhetoric might change as it pertains to the Twins going forward, because if I were him, I'd be big annoyed with them.
Yeah, and maybe we'll see a few years from now. I mean, these next few years could be pretty pivotal in terms of work stoppage, which you could imagine could maybe give some aspiring owners cold feet. And then is Manfred able to bundle together broadcast rights and sell new national rights? And what does that look like? So the next few years could be determinative in one way or another. But
yes,
we will see. Let's answer some emails. Including this one from Matt. Subject line, checked swing appeal gusto. So I've always wondered, to what extent does the gusto with which the home plate umpire signals the first or third base umpire on a check swing impact the base umpire's ruling? When the home plate umpire does it casually, it always seems as if the base umpire responds with a nonchalant, he didn't swing, of course, safe signal. But when the home plate umpire jumps out from behind the plate and sweeps his arm toward the base umpire as if this is the single most important thing in the universe at the moment, I can't help but expect the call to be a firm punch. He definitely swung, and he deserves the wrath of my fist for his lack of control. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, what a great question. I have not made a study of this, and so I have no idea if what I'm about to say is accurate or not. But I agree with the general perception put forth in the email that when it's a hey, what'd you see kind of appeal, the umpire is almost always no swing. And when it's a, did you see that? The umpire's like, I did it, it was a swing. And my theory is that it's because whether or not they're actually checking out mentally, that base umpires are worried they're checking out mentally, and they are taking the signal of the force of the signal from the home plate umpire as an indication that clearly it had to be swinging, and I didn't see it. I thought I was paying attention, but I wasn't paying attention, and it was a swing.
Yeah.
I think that that's at play for 10 to 15% of them. And it only applies to the home plate umpire. When the catcher makes an appeal, I think that the default position of the base umpire is to be like, hey, slow down, Buster. We'll ask ourselves if we need help. Yeah. So it's really only a home plate umpire thing. But yeah, it does seem like there's an emphatic. This is an area where it's just like I am fine. We have to refine the tech, and we need to clearly define what a swing is, because some of the ways we want to do it are wonky. But like, this is an area where I'm fine with the robots having their say. Like, come on.
Yeah,
come on.
And I think the KBO is about to implement a check swing challenge system.
Wonderful.
Actually, this month, I think in a matter of days, I believe I read. So we'll see how that goes.
How timely an email.
Yes. Yeah, this does ring true to me. It feels like cooking the books a little, putting your thumb on the scale, trying to tell your crewmate what you think, almost in a way where you think, why don't they just make the call themselves if they're so certain about that? But I guess if they're asked to appeal, then I guess they're supposed to appeal. But they're editorializing a little on the request to appeal. The thing about this is, though, I think maybe they are supposed to do it this way, because I remembered something Sam wrote in his Pebble Hunting Substack last year, where he did a close reading of the umpire manual, the MLB umpire manual, and he went through and picked out various interesting items in there. And one of them was about how you gesticulate. So I'll read his quote from the umpire manual. MLB umpires are expected to increase the assertiveness of their call, signal, and voice as the play becomes closer or more exciting. A casual, laid-back mechanic is not appropriate in a crucial close play, nor are over-elaborate excessive signals an acceptable technique, which I think Sam was surprised by, and I was as well, because we're all familiar with, it's a close play, and you make the just like, vehement safe sign, right? You know? And so it would be weird if you saw that in a extremely not close play, like someone's relax, out buddy. By half the base path distance, and it's like, safe. That would be a weird overreaction. Yeah, but also if it were completely casual and laconic when it's a super close play, it's like the umpires are supposed to be entertainers out there in a way. They're supposed to signal that this is exciting or close or something. So I guess maybe the ump is abiding by the rules in this case by gesticulating, appealing more forcefully, probably. That's maybe how it's actually supposed to work.
I think that there's some wisdom here, because you do want to match tone, It's like if you go to dinner and one person at the table is yelling, and you're like, why are you? And they're not yelling, but like their volume's way up, and you're like, okay, well, what are we doing here? This is like,
yeah.
And so I think that you want to kind of match the moment. It's like you're yes-anding the moment. Almost, right? You want to do that because we find tonal shift that is inexplicable based on circumstance to be discordant and uncomfortable. And an umpire has a lot of facets to their job. They have all these little tasks that they have to do, but their overarching project is to instill confidence, right? Your job as an umpire, when you really boil it down, is to make both the teams on the field and the folks in the stands feel like there is a steady hand at work.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that if you're like way up or way down relative to the register of the moment, people are like, wait a minute, what's going on? Are you because it suggests you're not paying attention, right? You're not you're not present to the vibe, and we are ever increasingly like kind of vibes based, and we're like, why aren't you're not picking up when I'm putting down. So I think that it's not so much that the umpires are meant to be Shakespearean or anything like that. It's that they are meant to blend into the emotional register of the moment to suggest, like, I gotcha. Don't worry about it,
Yes, I think that's true. Yeah, and Sam noted in that piece, not only does it suggest that on some level the umpires are performers, that, okay, they're signaling not just safer out, but also signaling excitement, but also projecting confidence, as you just said, because the umpire's manual also includes a few just exhortations to be confident and decisive. You're supposed to just always appear confident and decisive.
Yes.
And so on these close plays, when they should actually be less confident,
right,
then they have to project confidence even more, because otherwise it would undercut your faith in the proceedings, because it would seem like, if they're just holding up their hand, they're like, just shrug, flip a coin, I don't know.
What do you think?
Right. so they have to
like an out to you? Did
they have to seem even bolder, and this gets us into trouble because
yes, it does.
Leaders of human beings often project confidence, and often they don't know what they're talking about. But people find confidence and bluster to be reassuring in many cases. And so umpires sort of have to do the same thing to maintain the partial fiction that they are just completely correct arbiters. Right. So that is why they're so emphatic in that situation, which I guess would suggest, though, that when an umpire, if this applies to the appeal signal, then that would suggest that if they're emphatically appealing, then they think it's closer and they're less confident.
You kind of like horseshoe theoried your way all the way around to like,
I know.
My insistence that you tell me what you saw suggests I have no idea.
Right. But I do feel like it's the opposite, though. I think when it's check swings, I do get the sense that they really believe it, as opposed to I'm so unconfident that I'm actually going to pretend that I'm more confident. But I don't know. Maybe it could go either way.
Maybe it could go either way. It's sort of a real conundrum when you think about it, I think that the nice thing about both asking for help and for replay is that you do give yourself enough room to correct the mistake. Now, not so much with check swings, right? Like you do insofar as you're assuming that the base umpire is paying attention. And I want to be clear, I'm goofing that they're not paying attention. I think they're generally paying very close attention. But we've all had a panicked moment, But I think that like you can ask for help, but you don't have the same mechanisms of replay, at least right now, for a check swing that you would for an actual replay review. Is he on the bag or not? Did he oversight, et cetera? So I think it's good that they ask for help, but you are still relying on having a good sense of things yourself, because otherwise you could end up in a real fix.
Mm-hmm. All right. Jay, Patreon supporter, says, I was listening to your discussion on your respective experiences of fandom and how that affects the way you enjoy the sport. That got me thinking about the changing media landscape in baseball, with cable and RSNs in their death throes and the end of regional blackouts probably on the horizon. Do you anticipate any changes in how people think about baseball and fandom? If MLB TV eventually offers no blackouts, or say $20 a month for just your team and another $10 for every team, do you think that will impact the regional nature of the sport? If the barriers to entry are removed, are fans more likely to just watch their home team or to become more team agnostic?
Okay, so I think that my primary way of answering this is maybe to reference the NFL.
Yeah.
And say that I think there will be more, but you do have to pay extra to really see everything for the NFL. Like you have to get Sunday ticket. You can take in a good bit of it on Red Zone, but it's not like you're unblacked out, but you do have more exposure beyond your home market on any given Sunday than you do on any given day of the week trying to watch the MLB slate.
Yeah.
And so it's an imperfect comp, but I'll stick with it, I think, and just say that I think you would definitely have more, not agnostic, but, folks who are interested in a broader swath of teams than they necessarily have access to right this minute. But I still think there's a lot of really devoted fandom. Maybe the number of games dilutes that slightly. So like part of it, you're watching a bunch of, not everyone does this, of course, but like a lot of NFL fans, like they sit down and they watch Sunday football. You know, they're watching their team,
exactly.
hopefully, but they're watching a full suite of games. They're watching the Sunday night game. They're watching the Monday night game, despite every, rational part of their bodies telling them that there is so little satisfaction to be found on Thursdays. They're watching the Thursday night game, Ben. They're watching. And I can't distance myself from these jabronis. I'm one of these jabronis, right? I'm watching those Thursday games. I watch preseason football, okay? Like,
wow.
It's not totally hinged over here. So, but you do have fewer games, and it's over a compressed time period. So maybe there would be a little more, I was about to say seepage, which is just the grossest possible way to describe that, isn't it? Maybe there would be more broadening of your perspective on the game. But I think that the primary benefit that people would see from lack of blackouts is being able to access their favorite team with much greater consistency. I think that because baseball has been so regional for so long, and that is so entrenched in our understanding of fandom, it might be a little while before the model, quote unquote, of fandom shifts for most people. And it's so many games that it's hard, I have to, and it's the same for you. Like, we have to have our arms around the whole league for work. And I often feel like I'm falling down on that job, but sometimes I have to watch Gilded Age, Like, I can't only watch baseball because then I couldn't watch. It should be Train Daddy. Railroad Daddy is too long, unless you're trying to make a railroad joke, which, respect. But
he does railroad people pretty often, but it's
not in the way that people mean it when they use the term daddy. At least
that kind of daddy.
But spoilers.
Yeah, well, his daughter did get railroaded in a certain way, although he was not the instigator. Not that.
I mean,
all right, let's.
Wow.
There was a baseball scene on the Gilded Age, as we discussed, so you can combine both of those interests ideally.
Okay, there you go.
But I was going to say the same thing. There's just so much inventory in baseball, which is a good thing, I guess, if you're trying to sell that inventory to a broadcaster. But boy, there's just too much to take in. I could see people dabbling more, yes, but how can you keep up with everything that's going on? Because in the NFL, even though the NFL has gone to 17 games and will go to 18 inevitably at some point and is attempting to colonize every day of the week and has established a foothold on most days of the week, at least, it's still more contained. And there are so many fewer games. And Sunday historically has been just an event that you could devote to football. And it was the only day when you had much football action on. And baseball is just not like that. You can get your fill just watching your team. Most people, you've got 162 games, even if you're not watching other teams except when they play yours. And they're playing almost every day for several months. And so you just don't really need to go outside of that to get your fix of baseball, which is a good thing for the most part. I mean, in a lot of ways, at least, it's a good thing. It definitely does decrease interest in any individual game and in other teams' games. And even the NBA, I think there's more of a national perspective, certainly, than in baseball among fans. But again, there are half as many games there even. And the NBA regular season is just overdetermined, and it could be even shorter because there's just so much less randomness in basketball than in baseball, and so many possessions and talent shows out more quickly. But there's also just so much like league-wide drama going on, and there aren't as many players to keep track of because each roster doesn't have as many. And, I just think that it would help a little bit, but probably that ship has sailed for baseball to be embraced the way that football is now on a national level, where you're kind of aware of the entire league a lot of the time. But, it could help. Every little bit helps. Yeah.
And again, it helps. What are we aiming for? Like, helps to do what? Like, what level of interest do we, and this is a big question, so I don't mean to say that we have to answer it today, but I do think it's like helps to do what? To ensure its longevity, to ensure some sort of cultural footprint, to guarantee like sports supremacy.
Yeah. Higher franchise values. That's what it's all about. We want sales prices to skyrocket.
Look, I mean, it's not like it's not important, you know. You do want there to be, you want the folks who aren't serious about it to have incentive to leave.
Yeah. Okay. So question from Dan, who says, as I finished my streak extension on Duolingo today, I thought about how irrationally impressed some folks might be at my 1,600-day streak of completing language exercises. After all, the app permits you a certain number of streak freezes that allow you to miss a day once in a while without losing your active streak. I'd guess I probably miss about 1 day a month on average, and that my true active streak is only about 6 weeks or so. This led me to ponder, what if we allowed streak freezes in baseball? If any kind of streak were allowed to be extended by one iteration without the action being completed, how might that alter the leaderboards? Would anyone challenge Joe DiMaggio's hit streak, Cal Ripken's consecutive games played streak, Yusmeiro Petit's consecutive batters retired? Or are some records out of reach even given multiple attempts? So that could probably be stat blasted. I guess we could figure out if we were to allow one mulligan, just how much would that actually matter? I mean, when DiMaggio's streak was broken, he then immediately embarked on another streak, as I recall, that was somewhat lengthy. So I don't know if you were allowed to string together streaks separated by a day, how much that would change the leaderboard. But I think I reject the concept of a streak freeze. This defeats the purpose of a streak, does it not? The whole purpose of a streak is that you don't get a day off, you don't get to miss one. That's what makes it so impressive. And if it's just a language app, I guess the stakes are pretty low, so fine. But I don't know that I'd recognize this 1,600-day streak if Dan is missing a day a month. That's just, I mean, I know people get very worked up about their Wordle streaks or crossword streaks or whatever, and probably we should care about those things less than people do because it becomes like work. It becomes an obligation. It becomes an imposition. Like, I just feel so much pressure to do this thing that once was fun for me to do.
Right.
So I don't know that we should give it that kind of gravity, but I think if you're going to define a streak, like it has to actually be continuous.
I agree. And I think that part of the instinct, let's set aside the Duolingo of it all for a second. Or is it Doolid-lingo? That was a Learned League joke. I can't believe that's still fucking... You know who would say Learned League? Bertha Russell.
Certainly.
Just want to talk about Gilded Age.
I can sense that.
I just really love Gilded Age. So anyway, I think that part of the instinct to give people an out on streaks in sports is that there is I think correct perception that sometimes the maintenance of a streak was done to the detriment of the player, right? Where it's it would have been good for you to take a day off, though. You might have been better at baseball for part of this if you had been willing to take a day off. And I think that there's still a lot of pride, players still have a lot of pride in playing often. And depending on, the way that their contract is structured, they might have intense financial incentive to play as much as they possibly can. But I also think that we are, and certainly the industry is smarter, more aware. I'm not quite sure how I want to season that sentence from a value judgment perspective, but is certainly more aware of the benefit of planned rest. And that isn't to say that if you had a guy in the middle of a really intense streak that you might not have sentimentality override your better judgment to say hey, don't you want to take a day off though? But in general, I think we really prioritize or increasingly prioritize sort of the health and maintenance of the player over streakiness. And having said that, I think that like it's not a streak if you take a day off.
Right.
Like
if you want to de-emphasize streaks, that's
fine.
one thing. But you can't then redefine
what it is.
Streak to say that it's still a streak. Come on.
Yeah. And I also would say, now circling back to Duolingo and other like kind of things like that, I understand the instinct on some level, but I think that like it's putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable, as it were, because what you want to incentivize is consistency, and consistency doesn't necessitate consecutive days, right? You can be consistent and take a day off. It's fine. Mm-hmm. So free yourself from your burdens, you know? And I think, and here I might be overstepping slightly, but like the purpose of something like a Duolingo or a Learned League or any of these things is like the pursuit of knowledge in the thing, right? It's not about the shiny badge. Now, Duolingo gets you because that little, do they still have the little owl? Is the owl Duolingo? People get like, my understanding is that owl's a little asshole. Like that owl's not chill. And it you know, they want you on the app as much as they can. So this is the other thing. It's like your incentive is to learn. Your incentive is to gain fluency in a foreign language or to, you know, exercise your mind or whatever. Their incentive is to keep you on the app as much as they can, right? Like that's their incentive. So I just invite people to remember what their real incentive is and then what the evil app owl's incentive is, and like pick the one that makes better sense, which is you and yours, rather than that little owl. It like
I'm
like
learning
Hector's
from
people, right?
Yes, I'm learning from the NPR website. This owl evidently died earlier this year, but then was resurrected, and it turned out that the owl mascot faked his own death. So they played.
Wait a minute! I'm gonna do a big swear. What the? The Duolingo owl, which to be clear is not real. It's not a real owl. It exists in the app. Faked its own death. Why?
That was the in-universe story.
Apps shouldn't have lore like this. Like, what are we doing? Get out of here.
We discuss mascot lore at length, and this is now app mascot, corporate mascot lore.
No,
but I guess this was playing on the idea that people are fed up with the owl because the owl does hector them.
Yeah.
But evidently the owl appeared to have been fatally run over by a Cybertruck. And man,
gosh, this sure is a Friday episode on a Thursday, isn't it?
Duolingo canon was so complex, but
was it? So wait, it was like identifiably a Cybertruck?
It seems like it, but I don't know if that was itself sponsored or. I don't know that I want to know more about this, but
on the one hand, it would be so weird for Tesla to be like, look, what we would like to do is sponsor the murder of your fake owl. But also, wouldn't that be very on brand for them too? You know, wouldn't that fit right in?
The mascot's okay, if anyone was worried.
Thank God. Or, wow. I feel comfortable saying your app shouldn't have lore. Like it's an app. It's there to teach people to speak Spanish so they're less annoying on vacation. Like, what are we doing?
Question from Eli, Patreon supporter. Regarding your recent discussion of Yankees and Red Sox fandom discontent, could you weigh in on a dispute my spouse and I have? We are a mixed marriage, Yankees me and Red Sox her, and we've been arguing which is worse. The Red Sox's trades of Mookie and Rafi, or the Yankees continuing with the infuriating Aaron Boone era. Ilana's argument is that trading generational stars that you love, even though in pure surplus value terms may be worthwhile, is the biggest betrayal of fans. I've argued that what the Sox did was at least part of a plan and certainly less infuriating to watch than the Boone Yankees being mediocre to awful while hearing it's just right in front of us for the umpteenth time. Thoughts? Is it worse to die a death of 1,000 errors and base running gaffes and baffling lineup and pitching decisions, or the cuts from losing a generational superstar like Mookie?
Okay, so I feel like when we get questions like this, it's a test. Like, I'm not someone who believes particularly in the existence of an afterlife, But if there is one, I feel like my decision to be generous and take this question kindly is going to be like up on a Jumbotron. And the decision to tell people to please calm the hell down will not be taken kindly. And so I am going to answer this question with the dual goals of not only answering it, but also preserving my immortal soul, and say, I don't know if I can do it. Well, first I want to reassure both sides of this couple that you're going to be fine. It's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be
thrust into the role of relationship counselor here. It's a lot of pressure to put on us.
I don't even mean like within the confines of your relationship, although I have no reason to believe that won't be okay. I'm sure that will be fine. You sound like nice married people. No, what I mean is that like in the context of your fandom, you'll be okay. If I had to pick a thing, I would probably pick trading Mookie as a worse.
It's absolutely trading Mookie. It's definitely, there's no competition. Sorry, Eli. Ilana wins
sorry,
this
Eli.
one.
That seems kind of obvious. I feel like if I do have any doubts about how well you two are getting along, I do feel like you were set up a little bit to like submit this question to us with your wife understanding that actually they're going to tell you that it is very obvious that trading Mookie is the worst thing, and that's should have registered, just like it sounds like you should listen to her because she's right. It's definitely trading Mookie. Trading Mookie is the worst thing. Mookie is the worst thing. Because look, managers come and go. Franchise icons.
Yankees fans wish that this one would go. He has not gone, but still.
Managers come and go, but franchise icons much harder to replace. And the decision to trade him, I think, spoke to a deeper sickness. A rot, as it were, at the center of the model of the team. And I'm not even trying
and
to...
that wasn't part of a plan, really. I mean, maybe Devers' deal was part of a plan, perhaps, but trading Mookie, the plan was let's save money, basically. I mean, there wasn't really a subsequent... Well, I guess there was the investment in Devers subsequently, but
for a
really,
minute,
that wasn't like, we will move Mookie and therefore our team will profit. Perhaps the Fenway Sports Group will profit, but great things did not come of that deal.
No, they didn't. And so I think trading Mookie is worse. I would also just again, I know that things are not going well for the Yankees right now, and I don't want to discount anyone's feelings because that is a bummer. It does suck when your favorite team is losing. I will remind Yankees fans that you were in the World Series literally last year, really just right last year. And I know that going and not winning is staying on the franchise when you're the Yankees.
Yes.
But
we all remember how that series ended, but nonetheless,
you were there. You were there. And I do think that having an appreciation for where you've been very recently is useful. I don't know if I've succeeded in being particularly kind, and so I will apologize for that. But also, the answer to this question is obvious. And the broader point of this question is obvious, which is that you are both going to be fine, though.
Yes. During Aaron Boone's tenure, the Yankees have the third most wins in baseball. They won a pennant last year. They missed the playoffs once, I believe. They missed the playoffs in 2023, right? And they have made the playoffs in every other year with Aaron Boone at the helm. Granted, they have not gone all the way, but come on. Come on, please.
Come on. I feel heartened that your response is also, come on, because I don't want to sound better about my less successful franchise, which now I have to count the Orioles. So that's really something.
Sorry, I saddled you with the Orioles in this season of all seasons.
And now I'm mad at myself for my own playoff odds. This is such a conflict that has taken root. But it's fine. I think you're going to be fine. And isn't that great news? Isn't that great news that you're going to be fine? That's really a kind thing, actually, to remind you that you're going to be fine, because it's good. It's so good to actually be fine, and you're going to be fine. That's great news. Great news.
Glad tidings. Okay. James.
Glad tidings.
Patreon supporter says, I was listening to episode 2358 while driving to work, and all the stat blasts about scoring in tie games made me ask myself a how can you not be pedantic about baseball question. How often do we check if a game is tied? Or rather, what's the frame rate on score checking in a baseball game? Let's imagine a game where the fielding team is winning 3-2 and the batting team has the bases loaded. From here, there are several ways the scores can change. The batting team can get a sac fly and score a single run, for instance. Now that the score is 3-3, probably most people agree the game is tied. Yes, I would say so. But let's say there's a bases clearing double. The score is now 3-5. The game isn't tied after the play is over, surely. But was there a period between the first and second runners crossing the plate where the game was considered tied? If the batting team hits a grand slam, was the game also tied for a few seconds? Or does the dead ball nature of the home run mean the score jumps discontinuously from 3-2 to 3-6? Or even worse, the sacrifice fly situation, but after the play is over and time has been called, it's determined that some interference like infraction occurred during the play, and the runner who started the play on second is awarded home plate. Would the game have been tied in the moments between the end of the actual play and the assessment of the infraction? Is scoring in baseball a continuous or discrete event, or sometimes one and sometimes the other, depending on context? So is there an intermediate score, essentially, or is the score only officially updated when a play is complete?
I would say that the score is updated when the play is complete. So you would not... Disagreement?
Maybe.
I think, okay, so let's start with the ones where we will, I'm sure, not disagree. Grand Slam, is the score at any point tied in the midst of the runs scoring? Then,
I mean, what if the runners missed the base or something? It's not automatic, right? Like, what if the runners run in front of each other? It's not like
right, but that having happened would wait. No, you're definitely wrong. So no. Now, I am not saying that there couldn't be circumstances that emerge during replay, for instance, that would alter the score and thus put you back to a tied state, right? But that would be the result of review after the fact that then changes the score again, not
yes, and you could call that a separate play, I suppose.
Yes,
maybe the review itself is a discrete action.
Yeah, it's a discrete event within the flow of the game. Now, I think that if you, say, have runners on first and second and you hit a single and there's ambiguity about how many runs are gonna score, okay, maybe you can make an argument. I would still say that, like, the conclusion of the play is when you take stock of the score and determine you've gone ahead, you're tied. Now, announcers wild out on this all the time, and they say they're calling it as they see it, and the guys into it, and now the team is tied, and now But in terms of, like, the actual mechanics of the thing, like, for instance, I think, and there's probably variation here. This isn't. This is a weak argument I'm about to make.
Okay.
But, like, okay, you have a ballpark that has a mechanical scoreboard, right? Imagine, pick a ballpark that has a mechanical scoreboard.
Fenway.
Okay. Yeah. When did they change the score on the mechanical scoreboard?
I was just thinking that myself. They don't do every intermediate.
They don't. They go from what it was to what it becomes.
Yeah, and same on the broadcast, right? They won't tick up by one. They'll do it all in one lump sum, I think.
Right. Yeah. Right. Now, this doesn't matter. So, like, if you are delighted by the notion that it is temporarily for an instant tied,
That's just for convenience's sake, because why would you go to the trouble of let's replace this number and then this other number and then that other number when you know in the vast majority of cases what you're going to end up with?
When are you taking stock of the score? You're taking stock of the score when the play has concluded and the runners have all either crossed home if they have occasion to do so, if the batter runner has reached his base or is retreating to the dugout in the case of a sacrifice in some way that it scores a run. Yeah.
Well, so there's the provision in the rules where if you want to challenge or appeal certain type of plays, you have to ask to do that before there's another play, because once another play starts, then you can't appeal that anymore, which would suggest that until you actually appeal, it's all part of the same play.
Right.
And so I think it's when you challenge, when you appeal, that's a separate play. Okay. And so that if you reverse a score, you can do that, but that doesn't change what I think the core question is here, which in my mind, you score when you touch home plate. I think that is when your score technically increases.
Sure, but we're talking about how you talk about that and that.
Well, sure. Okay. So, I think given that this is a pedantic question that is explicitly asking about technically when is it tied, I think it's tied when the runner crosses home plate. If you do have a bases loaded, possible bases clearing situation, and runners are coming around and you're trailing by 1 run, when the lead runner scores, the game is tied in the middle of that play, right? And you don't know which way it's going to go. You could end up being ahead at the end of that play if the next guy scores.
Right.
You could be up by 2 potentially.
I'm allowing for.
Yeah, but at that moment, it's a tie game. And if that guy is thrown out, it will remain a tie game. And if he's not thrown out, then it won't be a tie game. But for a moment there, you're in this liminal phase. It is a tie game.
Zoomer over here.
So I think that if the question is the refresh rate, how quickly does the image update, essentially, the frame rate, that I think it happens when that player crosses home plate. Now, typically, that's either happening quickly enough that you don't really have time to talk about it as being a tie game because it's about to be untied. Or if it's a home run sort of situation, then you don't even really consider the possibility that it won't be tied because something really wacky would have to happen for it not to be tied. It's almost automatic that if a certain number of runners are on base and the ball goes over the wall, then all of those guys and the guy who hit it are going to score. And so you can project what the score will be at the conclusion of the play with certainty. And so you wouldn't bother to say, it's tied. We're up by 1. We're up by 2. But I think technically that is true, unless there's a rule that governs this that I'm not aware of, which is possible. I think it would be defensible to say the game was briefly tied for a second there.
I think it's defensible. It's just doofy.
Yes, I would agree that it's doofy.
Think about how it's written. Think about how it would be written in, if you're just looking at the box score and how it is written in the play-by-play on MLB.com, right? Mm-hmm. You would say, I'm thinking about this because he just got DFA'd. Nathaniel Lowe hit a grand slam. He hit his first grand slam as a national and now his last grand slam as a national. He hits his grand slam. In the MLB.com accounting of that game, it says Nathaniel Lowe hits a grand slam to right field. James Wood scores. Luis Garcia Jr. scores. Josh Bell scores. It is a clump of score. And then they have the updated score at the end of it. Because
Yes. And for the purposes of certain splits, if you were to look up performance in tie games, let's say, then that would be concluded plays. It wouldn't be part of the performance in a tie game was that split second where it was tied before another runner crossed the plate.
Is a moral failing. I just don't think that it's consistent with how we tend to think about how games proceed in sequence, which is that you do your accounting when the play has concluded. And then if it turns out the accounting was wrong because actually the guy was interfered with or he didn't touch the bag and so the run doesn't, then you adjust your accounting and you adjust the score, but you're doing those as discrete events in sequence. So that's the way I think about it. If you want to think about it differently, I don't think there's any harm in that. I just think that people are going to be like, well, sure, but what's the score right now? Because that's generally what they care about.
Yeah. No, I think it's like when you're sent to jail in Monopoly and you don't pass go and you don't collect 200.
Right.
I think in baseball, when you're sent home, you have to pass the intermediate bases, and someone to get to a certain score,
right,
you do have to actually have the intermediate scores for a second. I think that's my belief system about baseball. At least I think for all intents and purposes, practically speaking, we don't disagree. And I also don't disagree that this is doofy. but I don't think you can get to 5 runs without having scored 4 runs or 3 runs. I think you do have to have each incremental score at some point to get to your ultimate score. It's just that it happens so quickly that we don't bother making a distinction there. We make more convenient just intervals, which I think is smart and as it should be. But since the question was really asking about the nature of scoring on this pedantic level, I think I'm with this question, this scenario that there are brief, fleeting, transitory ties that we just do not acknowledge.
I think that's technically true, but
okay. Technically correct, the best kind. That's what we're going for here.
But meaningfully goofy. Meaningfully. Do you think that the Monopoly man was driving the Cybertruck that killed the Duolingo owl?
Maybe it's just more brand activation, just more synergy. Sounds great. Mary, Patreon supporter, says, not sure if this has been covered on the podcast already. Neither am I, though it doesn't ring a bell. Do we have a baseball definition for scattered? I was looking at a box score and noticed that the starting pitcher gave up only 2 earned runs despite allowing 10 hits. And I initially said to myself that he had scattered those hits. But upon reflection, I wonder if we can say the hits have been scattered only if they don't result in any runs. I don't think so. I
don't think so.
Yeah, you can scatter and still have allowed some runs, just fewer runs than you would expect based on the hit total, right?
Yes, I think that's right. I think that I would let the hit total be my North Star on that.
Yeah. There's probably some sort of equation that we could have here for what qualifies as scattered. You know, the mental arithmetic people do when they're deciding how egregious an age gap in a romantic relationship is. Like maybe there's something like that for scattered, where it's hits divided by runs or something. Like, I don't know what the typical correlation is, like how many runs are there per hit in a game. Right. So if you were to do some sort of regression analysis and say, okay, if you have 10 hits, then the most likely run total for you is X, without knowing anything else, what those hits were they home runs, whatever, right? Now, if you have 10 hits and they're all singles or something, then it's obviously easier to scatter them than it is if they're even solo home runs. But I think you could do some sort of division there where you just find out like your run allowed total is a lot lower than one would expect given the hit total. And sometimes that's because all the hits were singles. But usually I think the platonic ideal of scattered is that you're just getting into and out of jams. And so there's like a lot of traffic on the bases in every inning even, but you keep just getting out of it somehow, right? Like you put someone on, a couple guys get hits, but then you strand those runners and you don't cluster. It's like scattering is the opposite of clustering, essentially.
Yeah. I think that's right. The opposite of clustering.
Okay. But it doesn't have to be a shutout.
I don't think so, no. You can scatter a couple runs over a few innings and I wouldn't raise my eyebrows at that.
To do the math and come up with a scattered equation, please let us know. We'll report back. Michael, Patreon supporter, had a term to suggest. Lifelong Orioles fan, just like you, Meg.
Right, yeah, famously.
Yeah. Today's Sunday, August 10th loss to the Athletics was disappointing, but it did give me a new word to share. It was a walk-away win for the visiting Athletics. They scored the go-ahead and winning run in the top of the ninth, following a recent podcast where y'all had mentioned that the O's were the only team in 2025 to not record a walk-off win, or I guess that it would have been very unusual for a team to go a whole season without a walk-off win. And actually, the Orioles just had one. Update to that stat blast. They had their first walk-off of the season on Wednesday, I believe. Was that also against your Mariners? Was that the same game that we were talking about before? Trevor Rogers.
Was indeed. Yeah. They rallied to tie it in the bottom of the ninth, and then the Orioles walked it off.
Yeah. Rough.
In the top of the ninth. Did I say the bottom of the ninth?
Yes,
I don't remember
so.
what I said. But they scored in the part of the inning that they're allowed to score in, but then the Orioles were like, we're not done.
Right. So Michael's suggesting that what happened with the A's 3-2 victory was a walk-away win, right? They were the away team and won in their last at-bat or the last at-bat. What do you think? I love when you cogitate on making new terms in baseball for various specific situations. So the walk-away win where they scored the go-ahead and winning run in the top of the ninth. You can't have a walk-off in this situation if you're not the home team. So this is like the equivalent for the visiting team, I guess, a walk-away win.
I'm open to that. I don't know that I needed a term for this, and I do worry that it would engender some confusion because it is close enough to walk off that people might be like, wait, what kind of win are we talking about? So that's my hesitation. And you're not really walking away just yet, are you? You know, you got to go back out there to try to hold your lead. So maybe that's the larger issue, actually.
Okay. Dave in Hamilton, Ontario, appropriately enough, has a question about an Ontario team. After hearing your discussion on the Blue Jays demolishing the Rockies, I wondered how much that one series might change the perception of the Blue Jays season. They've had a great record for a few weeks now, but their run differential has not aligned with that record. After a plus 41 run differential series, the differential is still only plus 55, good for the ninth best in the majors, and they're plus 4 on their Pythagorean record and base runs record. If my math is right, they had a plus 14 differential entering that series, which would be 16th in the league. Right now, we recognize how much that one series positively affected their run differential, but will we remember that in a few weeks? Definitely I would love your thoughts on just how much that will change the narrative about how they've overperformed this season. So, yeah, that is a good question because we did make a big deal of that then, but then it all blends together. And so will you remember that at the end of the season? They're at plus 45 now. So there has been some effort, as I recall, to sort of strip out blowouts from run differential calculations. And I don't really recall how much that helps, if at all, whether that makes things more predictive because
how do you feel about that, like philosophically, though?
Yeah, I'm conflicted about that because sometimes a blowout is a reflection of you being a good team and the other team being bad. Right. Now, as we've discussed, I guess maybe there is more of a tendency to pour fuel on the fire now, gasoline on the fire, because you might put in Austin Nola to pitch. Right. And he is not as good a pitcher as his brother. And I believe he's no longer in the majors even after he fell on his sword in that game. So maybe there's an argument for it in the position player pitching era where it could get kind of skewed and distorted. But on the whole, I wouldn't want to just wipe away anytime you blew out another team because that could be skill.
Could say something.
Talent. Yeah.
It could say something meaningful about you as a team. Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. I think, seeing that run differential just does make me feel better about the Blue Jays than I did before that series, even though I know that a lot of that run differential came from that series and I know how bad the Rockies are and everything. But then, everyone gets to play the Rockies, though, and other teams haven't beaten up on the Rockies quite as much as the Blue Jays did in that series. So you got to give it up for that a little bit. Yeah. But I don't know.
Here's my sort of broader theory about how we metabolize these things. I think that fans of other teams forget this stuff if they ever knew it at all, right? They're not tracking the ins and outs of the run differential. They will notice extremes. When you have when you have clearly outscored your opponents by a lot, fans will notice. If you have like a wildly negative run differential, opposing fans will notice. But generally, I don't think opposing fans are really paying much attention to that. And I don't think that if a blowout or two in either direction is really skewing the number, that they're much aware of that. I do think that fans of that team have a sense of it, and the degree to which that sense is front and center in their minds is directly correlated to how anxious they are about the quality of their club.
Yeah.
Because if you have a team, if your favorite team has won a couple of blowouts and that is skewing your numbers, you're thinking about it a lot. It's sitting right there. You're like, we're not very good. Actually, we're not. This is that one game. It's that one couple of games. It's really, but actually, this is a paper tiger. You know?
Yeah.
But I think that's true. I think that is true. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that they're a paper tiger. I think the Blue Jays are a good club. I think
the Blue Jays are good. Yeah. We underrate them maybe because they have a little bit of the Brewers thing going on where they have a lot of depth in their favor. And less extreme star power, and then also good gloves, a great defensive team, and that's another thing that can cause a team to be underrated. Or, and plus some of their offseason additions haven't really been all that responsible for their success. But yeah, no, it's not a mirage that they've done well lately.
Anthony Santander, nowhere to be found.
Hoffman, Scherzer,
Santander, really? That's not fair. He's hurt.
Yeah. Sam, Patreon supporter, says, I think about Adam Dunn all the time. Who doesn't? I'm Sam, and I think about Adam Dunn all the time. It probably has to do with the flurry of, if Stanton or Schwarber hit 500 home runs, book them to the Hall of Fame discussions I've seen this season. Stanton is in a different class, so I really want to get into Dunn versus Schwarber. I don't really recall there ever being that type of dialogue used at any point in Dunn's career, though just because I don't remember it doesn't mean it didn't happen. He was pretty close to 500. Yeah, he got up to 462 career home runs. Pretty close. That's one good Adam Dunn season away. I took a look, and their rate stats are extremely similar. If anything, you'd expect Schwarber's to start taking a dip in the coming years once he gets into his mid-30s. As far as FanGraphs WAR, Dunn has a slight lead, but I think the argument could be made. His FanGraphs WAR takes a hit by playing so much time in the field, pre-universal DH. I mean, you could also say that about Schwarber, too, even though it's not pre-universal DH anymore. Here are my questions. Do the numbers support the statement, Kyle Schwarber is the modern-day Adam Dunn? And second, if so, why are or were they perceived so differently? Is it due to Dunn existing in a pre-sabermetric era? Did Dunn's overall reputation take a hit because of how terrible his defense was? Are fans just burnt out on seeing so many Hall of Fame ballots where the home run guys have PD implications and they just want to see a masher get in? I'm assuming it's a combination of things. Curious to get your 2 cents. So, yeah, I mean, I think if anything, well, Dunn was one of those guys who early in the sabermetric appreciation era, I think was sort of embraced because he was a slow, hulking, patient slugger, high strikeout slugger, low average. And he was a guy who I think his reputation was burnished in sabermetric circles, which were not as mainstream as they are today, but he was kind of embraced for, hey, this guy's actually pretty valuable, even though he's striking out almost 30% of the time and batting 240 or whatever, which was lower than relative to the league than it is now. And there was a lot of attention paid to how many home runs he hit. I mean, I remember that streak of 40 home run seasons when he hit 40 exactly on the dot 4 consecutive seasons. That was a pretty big deal. And then he bookended that with a 46 and 2 38s. I mean, that guy could hit home runs. And I think, I would quibble with the recollection a little because I think that Dunn was one of those guys who got mentioned as like, what if he gets to 500? That'll really be a dilemma. And then, there were enough guys who got to 500 and didn't get in because of PED stuff that maybe that became a little less of an issue, although there's still really no one who's, seen as clean and 500 plus who's not in. So I think he was on that list, absolutely, of people. And I wrote something when he retired for Grantland about WAR being so useful because it could help us compare, say, Adam Dunn and Juan Pierre, who were like diametrically opposite players, but at least at the time had identical WARs. And okay, this is why it's useful to have a stat like this that can put these players on the same scale, even though their contributions came in vastly different ways. So, is it just that like Schwarber's been on better and more notable teams and has had bigger moments because of that? And, 2016 Cub, and now he's on these Phillies teams, and Dunn was on some stinkers, and maybe that has to do with it, or maybe he just came along too soon. I don't know.
Too soon and stinky teams,
Yeah.
Stinky is too strong. Stinker. But yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. The combination of those things kind of clouded his legacy in our collective imagination, I believe. Yeah.
I believe he never played a postseason game. So it's very different from Schwarber. I think that's a big part of it. He was big. I mean, Big Donkey was the nickname, right? So he was 6'6", almost 300. On the podcast, Mike Schur and Joe Posnanski did this classification thing recently where they like sorted players based on sluggers, especially based on their size. And so like baseball monsters were huge. And then they had an intermediate category, which was the oaf, the baseball oaf, which was said fondly, right? But
oaf
Adam Dunn
suggests a lack of coordination that I don't know is fair.
But it was like, Jim Thome was the baseball, kind of like a friendly giant, but like not a baseball monster, which would be like, Ellie De La Cruz or Shohei Ohtani or someone.
That should be known as the Andre, for Andre the Giant, because he seemed like a sweetheart.
Sure.
Yeah.
Could work.
But not an oaf.
They had a separate category for like Schwarbs, which were like just mini oafs, basically, because like Schwarber is 5'11" listed, and yet you'd think that he'd be bigger. He's like in that Matt Stairs. He's bigger than Matt Stairs, but he's in that kind of like slugger-shaped, barrel-chested home run hitter, but smaller of stature than one might expect, whereas Adam Dunn just dwarfed everyone and looked the part more than Schwarber, I guess. But no, I think they're fairly comparable, and I think it has a lot to do with the stage on which Schwarber has had his heroics, which is partly in his control and partly not.
Oaf is going to bother me, though.
Yeah.
I wonder, there's not a way to do this, and that's a bummer. But in addition to the like a end of career, you were awesome award, like a career Cy Young or whatever, we should take all the guys who didn't get to play in the postseason and like give them a playoff. But then they won't be themselves, they'll be diminished.
Yeah.
They'll be, you can't do it after they've ended their career, because then it's like, do you really want to see like that team? No, you don't. You want to see them when they're young, bright guys, when they're oaf isn't quite right. I do have a note on that. I get what they're going for, but I think that there's a tweak that needs a little tweak. Needs a tweak.
Well, I'm sure they're open to tweaking it and may potentially tweak it themselves. But okay, we can do a few more next time. Perhaps I have a few leftovers.
All right, that sounds good.
You can support Effectively Wild on Patreon by going to patreon.com/effectivelywild, as have the following 5 listeners who have already signed up and pledged some monthly or yearly amount to help keep the podcast going, help us stay ad-free, and get themselves access to some perks. As have the following 5 listeners: David Gublar, King Shackles, Tom Kleeman, Mike Everode, and Kyle Graber. Thanks to all of you. Patreon perks include access to the Effectively Wild Discord group for patrons only, monthly bonus episodes, playoff live streams, prioritized email answers, personalized messages, discounts on merch, and ad-free FanGraphs memberships, and so much more. Check out all the offerings at patreon.com/effectivelywild. If you are a Patreon supporter, you can message us through the Patreon site. If not, you can contact us via email. Send your questions, comments, intro and outro themes to podcast@fangraphs.com. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Effectively Wild on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, and other services. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/effectivelywild. You can find the Effectively Wild subreddit at r/effectivelywild, and you can check the show notes at FanGraphs or the episode description in your podcast app for links to the stories and stats we cited today. Thanks to Shane McKeon for his editing and production assistance. We'll be back with one more episode before the end of the week, which means we will talk to you soon.
When I'm riding the bus or going for a walk, one strap on my head, then listen to people talk. I want to hear about baseball with nuance and puffy and stats. Yeah, yeah. Don't want to hear about future wins or about gambling odds. All they want to hear about might count hypotheticals and the texture of the hair on the arm growing out of one's head. Gross, gross. Give me effectively wild. Give me effectively wild. Give me effectively wild. This is effectively wild.